Views and opinions expressed on all radio shows broadcast on Tom's Radio Toronto are entirely those of the hosts, guests, and callers who are entirely responsible for all show content and do not in any way reflect the opinions of Tom's Radio Toronto or its staff. These broadcasts are presented and made public as entertainment and general information only, in the hope that they will be entertaining and informative to listeners. They are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or mitigate in any way any disease or condition or to promote any specific lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practice, nor is the information presented necessarily accurate or verifiable. The view-
Good afternoon, Wisdom fans. I'm Bruce Gilbert, and this is the Wisdom Show. We are located in our secret cave of wisdom at Bathurst and Wilson in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We air every Friday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., and you can find us on all the major platforms at Tom's Radio, one word, TOMZRADIO, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. What is the Wisdom Show, and how do we share wisdom with our friends? We are dedicated to understanding, acquiring, and mastering wisdom to explore how to enrich ourselves and better society. Sound good? Initially, we survey the world's most famous and ancient book of wisdom, the biblical book of Proverbs. But I have a treat from the previous century for you today. So what is wisdom, you might ask? Because people confuse it. They confuse it with this generation, the space age, the information age. We confuse it with knowledge or data. However, wisdom is the muscle we build to enable greater character, success, and happiness in all our lives and those around us. I like to say, I believe there would be a lower criminal prosecution prison rate if more people had more wisdom. And I also say, if we lack a good psychological foundation, now let me say it, we will need to rely on medications and psychological counseling less if we all as a society had basic wisdom. So the question is, so Bruce, what's wisdom? That we're going to explore, and we're going to do it through the book of Proverbs. But first, ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring you to the 19th century. And I want to compare wisdom. So we'll hold off on the book of Proverbs for just a moment. There was a fellow, John Stuart Mill, who wrote several books. He's a former member of Parliament of Great Britain, usually cited as J.S. Mill. He was an English philosopher, political economist, member of Parliament, and civil servant, one of the most influential thinkers in the history of classical liberalism, which is different than today's liberalism. He contributed widely to social theory, and political economy. I want to read some almost random quotes to put you in the mood of what I'm talking about. And I maintain his quotes are great. They're all nuggets of silver, but Book of Proverbs is nuggets of gold. So listen to these. I'm going to read it slowly and try to emphasize. John, you would do well to read anything by John Stuart Mill. And this is I put the most famous phrase up front. He's often quoted. Bad men need nothing more to compass their ends than that good men should look on and do nothing. That's a fundamental. That explains a hell of a lot of everything in history. This one I'm fond of. The pupil who is never required to do what he cannot do never does what he can do. Not bad, huh? I'm hitting 2 out of 2. One person and I threw in a couple things that I disagree with, but we'll see how it plays out. Because he's writing for a particular time, particular definitions. One person with a belief is equal to a force of 99 who have only interests. He who knows only his own side of an argument knows little of that. And when you're talking with friends, if they can only state the liberal left woke anarchist argument. It can't explain the Republican conservative argument. They don't even know their argument. That's constant. I cry when I hear idiots. Well, I don't cry. I don't laugh. That's for damn sure. No great improvements in the lot of mankind are possible until a great change take place in the fundamental constitution of the modes of thought. You got to learn. People say learn how to think, and I don't think anyone knows what. I don't think the common man knows what that means. Here's a little loaded phrase. We'll correct it in a minute. Conservatives. Don't forget, he's talking about a different conservative in England in the 1850s. Conservatives are not necessarily stupid, but most stupid people are conservatives. We'll contend it. Don't worry. I'm a conservative. The most cogent reason for restricting the interface of government is the great evil of adding unnecessarily to its power. A person may cause evil to others not only by his actions, but by his inaction, and in either case, he is justly accountable to them for injury. Doing something or doing nothing, either way, you're accountable. Everyone who receives the protection of society owes a return for the benefit. That's pro-conservative, by the way. And here he changes topic completely. This is just random quotes. Ask yourself whether you are happy, and you cease to be so. Isn't that a killer? So this Jon Stewart, I don't know how we'll develop adding him to the show. I don't know how we'll do it. But here we go. That's, let me put this aside, let me put this aside, this aside. So ladies and gentlemen, we're starting chapter 6 of the book of Proverbs. And I picked it because it makes a claim. It makes a claim it's the wisest piece of literature ever written in mankind, in the world, in history. So we have 3,000 years to compete with it. John Stuart Mill does a good job competing, but he lacks the poetry. There's two things that I'm trying to show in this show. I'm trying to show biblical literacy, because people immediately say, oh, Bible, they have slaves in it. That can't be good. Next topic. And I'm trying to show wisdom in the Bible and depth in literature. I maintain you can't. What I do with this in Hebrew and bring it to English, you can't do with Shakespeare. You can't do with John Stuart Mill. You can't have double meanings laced into the word that flesh out a deeper understanding. But and another thing that the book of Proverbs, now you can flash the book of Proverbs. A whole moment ago, I feel much better now. King Solomon is dragging you in a headlock, dragging you along from chapter 1 to chapter 31 to try to make you wise. So he's describing wisdom, and he's dragging you along into it to make you wise. So depth in literature through the Hebrew wordplay, making you wise, and against your kicking and screaming, making you wise also. So let's begin. This is my style. I read it through in the plain English translation, then I come back. And in the plain English, it's not deep. It almost seems random, and it seems almost shallow. But I want to do that to show you how, if you don't have a commentary, and I have 4 or 5 commentaries, then you miss the depth of it. So I'm showing you what most people do when they read it. And even, sadly, in a lot of the schools. So here we go. My son, chapter 6, my son, if you have good surety, of course, what's surety? For your fellow have given your hand for a stranger. Incomprehensible. If you have been trapped by the sayings of your mouth, you have been caught by the sayings of your mouth. Do this, then, my son, and be saved, for you have come into your fellow's palm. Go, humble yourself, and give your fellow superiority. Give no sleep to your eyes, nor slumber to your eyelids. Save yourself like a deer from the hand, and like a bird from the hand of the snare. And I would say so far this is all incomprehensible. We're going to prove me wrong in a minute or two. Go to the ant, you sluggard, and see her ways and become wise. For she has no chief, overseer, or ruler. Yet she prepares her bread in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. O lazy one, how long will you lie there? When will you get up from your sleep? a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to lie. And your poverty shall come like a fast walker, and your want as an armed man. An unscrupulous man, a man of violence, walks with a crooked mouth. He winks with his eye, he shuffles with his feet, he points with his finger. Contrariness is in his heart. He plots evil all the time, he incites quarrels. Therefore calamity shall come suddenly, he shall suddenly be broken beyond repair. You notice this has nothing to do with the previous. We'll get to that. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, and the 7th is an abomination of his soul. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that thinks thoughts of violence, feet that hasten to run to evil, one who speaks lies with false testimony and incites quarrels among brothers. My son, keep the commands of your father and do not forsake the instruction of your mother. Bind them always upon your heart, tie them upon your neck. When you walk, it shall lead you. When you lie down, it shall guard you. And when you awaken, it shall speak to you. It will speak for you. For a commandment is a candle, and the Torah is a light, and the disciplining rebukes are a way of life. To guard you from an evil woman, from the smoothness of the alien tongue. Do not covet her beauty in your heart, and do not let her captivate you with her eyelids. Because a man is brought to a loaf of bread, for harlot, and a married woman will hunt a precious soul. Can a man rake embers from his skirt without burning his clothes? Or can a man walk on live coals without scorching his feet? So is he who goes into the neighbor's wife. No one who touches her will go unpunished. They will not despise a thief if he steals to sate his appetite, for he is hungry. And if he is found, he will pay 7-fold. He must give all he owns. One who commits adultery with a woman is devoid of sense. One who destroys his soul, he will do it. He will find wounds and disgrace, and his reproach shall not be erased. For jealousy shall arise, the husband's wrath, and he will not have pity on the day of vengeance. He will not have regard for any ransom, neither will be consent, though you have given him many bribes. Okay, now what I think I read is somewhat incomprehensible, but that's what happens when you have your trusty Bible beside you and you don't have a commentary. So to some degree, I'm pitching, buy a commentary, and as the show evolves, we'll sell books and sell commentaries. So let's go through it now, and let's go for the depth. Sound good, Owen? You into it? Yeah. Okay, Owen's into it. How can I argue with that? So the first verse, my son, it always starts a new section when it says Shema Beni, my son. That's a clue. I'm telling you the clues of how to read this. If you have good surety, if you have stood surety, which means you've taken a loan and for interest, and you've put up something like I'll lend you my car for a week if you'll be assured that I'll pay you. That's surety. Collateral. Thank you. So my son, if you have stood surety for your fellow and have given your hand for a stranger, if you have been trapped. Now here's the problem. He borrows $1,000 from friend A, and it says I'll pay you in a couple months, and then a couple weeks later something else happens and he can't go back to friend A. He goes to friend B and says I need to borrow another $1,000. So now he's in the hole, $2,000 to two friends. You have been trapped by the sayings of your mouth. You have been caught by the sayings of your mouth. We'll get into what's the difference between trapped and caught in a minute. Do this, then, my son, and be saved, for you have outcome into your fellow's palm. Humble yourself and give your fellow superiority. We get into it. Give no sleep to your eyes, nor slumber to your eyelids. Save yourself like a deer from the hand, and like a bird from the hand of the snare. Now, why the animals, deer and bird? because that's what jumped out at. Basically, I go through the English commentaries. I can also look through the Hebrew, but what jumps at me is what I present to you, and I discount a lot of stuff. All the stuff that says, how can I put it? Be more religious, I don't bring to you. But the stuff that has depth in literature, I bring to you. So what's the difference between the deer and the bird? If they're both trapped, a bird in a net, an animal on the ground in a trap, whatever a trap looked like 3,000 years ago, the bird, when he's shaking free of the net, his feathers are flying all over the place. He's dropping feathers. Where the deer, when he breaks out of the trap, is through brute strength. Okay, so there's two different designs, two different metaphors, two different illustrations. And I take it to a slightly different level. One of the commentaries said the bird leaves something behind. So I would suggest that in contrast to leaving something there versus the animal, the deer, who's with brute strength is getting out of the trap. The leaving something there is selling your goods to pay back the person you owe money to. The brute strength is working overtime. If you're working a 40-hour week and you can do it for a few weeks 50 hours, that's brute strength. If you've got some asset at home like a coin collection and you have to sell it, that's the bird's feathers. So the signal to the reader is the use of the deer from the hand and like a bird from the hand of the snare. That's the depth in literature that you don't have in English, where one word gives a different message. We go on to verse 10, so I'll catch up with 6 and then go into 10. And we started with deer and bird, but it's a metaphor and an instruction for the only two ways you can get out of debt. Hold on a second. I had a whole story here. Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, here we go with... Wait a minute. I see I'm out of order here. Verse 6 through 8. Learn for... Yeah, forgive me. I see my notes are a little bit unhinged. Go to the ant and learn for you sluggard, and her ways become wise. So we had on the 4th episode, Rabbi Yisrael Cohen explained how the use of animals and the use of the ant in particular. The ant is a creature that harvested about 1,000 times its weight in its little hole in the ground. It keeps the top section for something like it keeps the top section for living. No, the top section for storing his goods, which are grains of wheat, typically. The middle section for living and the bottom section for waste that he creates. But the difference is the weight of a seed of a grain that compared to his own weight. Running out of dough. Wait a minute, I'm all confused here. Go to the ant, you sluggard, and see her ways and become wise. For she has no chief, overseer, or ruler. There's independence there, not answering to anyone. Although they're like machines. She prepares, now here's another thing from just the weight of what you're getting, it's the timing. She prepares her bread in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. You can also do that in preparation before you go on a plane. You got to pack or you got to save your money for the trip. It's the time reference beforehand. You can't just do it on the spot and then go into debt. That also fits into the above section. He says, "Oh, lazy one, how long will you lie there? When will you get up from your sleep?" And then there's this lovely little poem. In Hebrew, they use the word ma'at, a little. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to lie. And I had to look up what slumber is compared to sleep. Oh, and you know the difference between slumber and sleep?
Sleep is when you rest. Slumber is, I don't know.
Okay, I had to look it up. I've probably never used the word slumber in my life, but I had to look it up. Slumber is you set the alarm for 7 a.m. You press on snooze. So you're half asleep, half awake. That's slumber. So it's in that state where you're a fool. But fine, you're coming out of sleep. That's slumber. So that what he's saying here is if you get into this loan problem with a friend, you're half asleep. You're slumber. You're an idiot. Okay, that's the metaphor. Here is my man. Just come in. Just come in, Alan. No, just come in. Trust me. We have a late guest. Come in. You want to flash Alan's name on the screen? Alan, just come in here, sit here. Okay? Just come in, sit here. He's shell-shocked from the beauty of the Cave of Scrolls.
It's very nice.
And I'm sure you brought your biography for me to read. Just kidding, just kidding. Alan's going to be our guest presenter next week. Alan P. Wellman has a law practice in Toronto and is a gentleman by all manner. So this is my notes that I'm reading, so you can follow along. You get the drift of what I'm doing. Okay. So if you chime in, keep your mouth close to the microphone. He didn't hear a word. He didn't hear a word. Okay. So where we are, we're talking about the issue of borrowing from a friend. And I bring it to a modern example. Verse 11. And your poverty shall come like a fast walker, and your want as an armed man. The armed man is for sure more extreme than the fast walker, but the point is it's a faster pace. Verse 11, your running out of dough is normally fast and sudden, but these days it's slow and quietly mounting. You can get bled into losing it all your money, but slowly while you're slumbering. There's overdraft, there's credit cards, there's lines of credits. Then if you max out on all of them, you might have to sell your house and get bled into losing it all slowly while you are slumbering. So now we have a little depth in the text. He's talking about don't be a jerk while you're sleeping, conducting business transactions. And these are the only two options: work extra hours or sell some property you have, as I alluded to the deer and the bird and so on. We go on. We finished 2 sections there. We go on to verse 12. Now, verse 12 is interesting because verse 12 through 15 compares to verse 16 through 19, and all I can get is he repeats it, and my footnote is on the word repeat. He repeats it for emphasis. I don't have any other reason, and maybe it's for the lack of research that I did. So, verse 12 is soft. And count them up. I'll do it on my fingers to show you. An unscrupulous man, and later, a man of violence walks with a crooked mouth. That's 1. Winks with his eyes. 2. Shuffles his feet. 3. Points with his finger. 4. Contrariness is in his heart. That's why I have 5 here. He plots evil all the times. And number 7. He incites quarrels. Now, verse 15. Therefore calamity shall come suddenly. He shall suddenly be broken beyond repair. The next thing, verse 16. Now, the previously I felt was a soft introduction to these half a dozen evil character traits. Verse 16, he repeats it, but differently. Much harder. There are 6 things that the Lord hates. And before, by the way, in verse 12, it was an unscrupulous man. This is what God hates. And the 7th is an abomination of his soul. So they're similar but different. Haughty eyes compares to winks with his eyes. A lying tongue compares to a crooked mouth. Hands that shed innocent blood, it references pointing with his, hey, you over there, pointing with his fingers. Verse 18, a heart that thinks thoughts of evil, that compares to contrariness in his heart. In verse 18, feet that hasten to run to evil, that compares to shuffles with his feet. Verse 19, he speaks lies with false testimony, that compares to he plots evil all the time. Excuse me. And number 7, he incites quarrels among his brothers. And up here he says he incites quarrels. So what's going on here? It's a more intense version, but the difference between all 6 and the 7th, all 6 are pairs. You can have them between one bad person and one good person. But the 7th incites quarrels. He brings in other people. He enlarges his radius. It's sort of like sharing on YouTube and podcasts. Just kidding. Okay, so that's up to verse 19. Now, I also want to emphasize something in verse 12 when they describe the bad guy. Just a second. Oh, no, sorry. In verse 12, the Hebrew says, Ba'adam Belial. So they translate it as an unscrupulous man. But Belial is what I want to focus on. Beli means without, and aisle is a yoke. Of course, when I first got into this stuff, what's a yoke? What an animal wears over his shoulders to push a cart. Owen grew up with those, right? Yeah, okay, fine. So Belial means, they translate an unscrupulous man, but it means a man without tethered, or serving someone, which happens to, on this show, you get Bob Dylan quotes, not just biblical thing. And if I sing it, it's an extra bonus. The smirks in the studio are going wild. So the song Gotta Serve Somebody by Bob Dylan. And I will sing. You may be an ambassador to England or France. You may like to gamble. You may like to dance. You may be the heavyweight champion of the world. You may be a socialite with a long string of pearls. But you're going to have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're going to have to serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. I would like to suggest, by the use of the word Belial and saying unscrupulous man, everyone has to serve someone, whether it's in a theological context or an employment or a marriage thing. It's a fundamental in all life. Ladies and gentlemen, on that serving someone, we've got to serve our sponsors. We'll be back on the other side in just a moment.
Our company is committed to providing truthful, honest, competent, and result-oriented service through advising and representing our clients in Canada and overseas in a wide range of immigration matters. We focus on providing support, building dependable relationships, and promoting success. We are dedicated to understanding what results you want and to helping you understand what actions we can take on your behalf.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back to the secret cave of wisdom located underneath the buildings at Bathurst and Wilson, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And look at those scrolls. They're gorgeous. Any rate, we go on to verse 20 after my singing career. Oh, I want to just tie up the last thing, verse 12 through 15, compared to verse 16 through 19. It's parallel. Why? Why the emphasis? Why? And the only answer is they're emphasizing, I don't have anything better. And if people could tell me why it's better, I'd be delighted to add it to my notes. And fine. We go on to verse 20. It says, my son, keep the commands of your father and do not forsake the instructions of your mother. It's a common refrain in the book of Proverbs. Generally speaking, mother equals the stories that we tell in the book, and dad equals the laws. And when the way I was brought up, my parents never laid a finger on me, but the threat of wait till your father gets home was certainly in the air. And that's, I think, I suppose, not knowing anything really, I suppose that's the natural order of couples and families. Verse 21 is very interesting, and I'm confident Alan will recognize the parallel I'm drawing. I'm going to read the English for verse 21-22. it references the instruction and commands of your mother and father. Bind them always upon your heart, tie them upon your neck. Next verse, when you walk, it shall lead you. When you lie down, it shall guard you. When you awaken, it shall speak for you. Okay, so what's that similar to? It's similar to the creed of the Jewish religion called the Shema, the Hero Israel. I don't even know what to say if it's a blessing or what it is, but it's a central paragraph. It's the lahav, not to make a comparison. It's the Coke. It's the real thing point. So we just had this. We just read. I'll just emphasize: bind them upon your heart, tie them upon your neck. When you walk, it shall lead you. When you lie down, it shall guard you. When you awaken, it shall speak for you. Now I'm going to read the section of the Jewish prayer book that is It is the key fundamental sign. Hear, O Israel, God, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one and only. Now listen to this parallel. You shall love Hashem, your God, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your resources. Let these matters that I command you today be upon your heart. Teach them thoroughly to your children, and speak of them while you sit in your home, while you walk on the way, and when you retire, and when you arise. Bind them as a sign upon your arm, and let them be tefillin between your eyes, and write them for the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. So I'm emphasizing the part in the book of Proverbs, bind them on your heart and around your neck, when you lie down, when you rise up. It's the same as Kriyat Shema. So what do we do with that? I really don't know, except that it seems that the book of Proverbs lifted the concept, at least, from the 5 books of Moses. And that's all I can do. But I want to say something about creeds. And people don't know what the word is, except that Sylvester Stallone movie with Apollo Creed. But what's a creed? Oh, and you know what a creed is? I asked you before. I put you on the spot before, but slumber is sleep. What's a creed?
I think it's some sort of agreement.
Okay, not bad, but you're not getting full marks. Okay. Alan, you have a night. Oh, you got notes in front of you. I can't ask you. Right? You're disqualified. Okay, definition of a credo. It's a Latin word. First of all, it's a noun. A statement or system of beliefs or guiding principles. Biblical. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you is an example of a credo. What's the American credo? It's on all 3 coins, and I'm taking this completely from Dennis Prager. It's on the coins: liberty, in God we trust, and e pluribus unum, which means from many come one. It used to refer to the states. Now people think it refers to ethnicity and so on. But their creed is on the coins. Everyone's carrying it in their pocket. And you know the Canadian credo? Alan, you know the Canadian credo? Like, I'm the only one in Canada who knows this.
Peace, order, and good
Oh,
government.
you got the notes? I can't ask. He's like cheating. Peace.
Well, it's bound on my heart. I know that.
There you go. It's
Like
bound
every
on his
lawyer.
heart. It's peace, order, and good government. Okay? Now, it's a belief system. It is what you stand for. And then I saw, in doing my research, the word credit comes from credo. It's from the same Latin. Would you lend money to a person who has or is on the road to accomplishments? Sure. He has good credit. Would you lend money to a jerk? I don't think so. Right? He has no credit. He has no credo. Please recall this chapter begins with, and I would like to say, the chapter begins with, my son, if you have stood sure, if you put up some collateral for your fellow and have given your hand for a string, if you put up some money for a loan, please recall this chapter begins with how a jerk borrows money, gets into trouble, and has only 2 options: to find the money to repay his creditors. It all comes together like a nursery rhyme. Now, I'm on the 10th point of what I've been trying to make here. Verse 29 through 35. And here we go. Oh, wait, did I skip ahead a bit?
Well, we're at verse 23.
Yeah, or 20. Well, yeah. Thank you. Okay, it's not so important. It says, for a commandment is a candle, and the Torah is light, and the disciplining rebukes are a way of life. There's 3 levels of intensity here when you're talking about biblical instruction. or anything. The candle is a metaphor for it's a small light and you can illuminate a little part of the room. But they're saying the Torah, studying I don't want to translate Torah, but instructions for life, is a complete light on in the room. And then he goes, and disciplining rebukes are the way of life. So, Owen, you like me to give you a disciplining rebuke, right? But they're saying that's what you need to. You want the driving instructor to give you disciplining rebukes. It's the only example I got. Nothing, or you want, if you're in the military and you're learning any damn heavy equipment, particularly in the military, you want disciplining rebukes. That's verse 23. Now we go into a weird section, and basically we go into the story of prostitution. And why here? Why now? I don't know. I didn't write it, but that's what we had. I'm stuck, open-handed like a fool. But this is my story. Please don't tell my wife I was here, okay? So it says, let me just go back a second. So it says, commandment is a candle, a Torah is light, disciplining rebukes are the way of life, to guard you from an evil woman, from the smoothness of the alien tongue. Let me just get here. Let me get my act together here. Why there? I don't know. But the next line, do not covet her beauty. That's level 1 in your heart. And do not let her captivate you with her eyelids. That's level 2. I don't know what the point they're making, but intensity. You can gaze at a gorgeous woman dressed in a lovely outfit at a party, but if she's flashing her eyelids at you, that's level 2. By the way, I believe this book or this section book is written for dumb guys. I don't believe it's written for women, but it's not exclusive. And that part, I'm not able to ferret it out any better. Next verse, because a man is brought to a loaf of bread. What the hell does that mean, brought to a loaf? If I got a piece of loaf of bread here, are you going to come to it? What they mean is poverty. It comes down to he just wants a damn loaf of bread. That's for the hooker. They translate. They say harlot in better English. I'm going to use an updated, or prostitute. And a married woman will hunt a precious soul. Big on don't do adultery. It's in some list of 10 something or others I've heard of before. But again, the same sentence is comparing a simpler level to a more complex, to a more dangerous level, I guess is it. Now, the next two verses are metaphors that I think everyone but the last 150 years or 100... How old are matches? I'm going to guess matches have been around for 150 years. That's my guess. Before that, you rarely see it in movies. I've seen it in a Western or something. People traveling would have a box. And from last night's fire, they would take hot coals, put it in the box, and travel with it so that they could light the fire at the next stop or something like that. That's my understanding of it. So they go into this analogy that's that's not in the 20th century. Can a man rake embers with his skirt without burning his clothes? Stay away from the woman here, she's going to burn you. Or can a man walk on live coals without scorching his feet? Again, the fire thing. It's an easy trick. Oh, the fire's a hill. Okay, fine. But, I think that's sort of shallow. Verse 29. So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife, again, adultery, no one who touches her shall go unpunished. Now, in the Hebrew, first of all, it's negatives, but lo yinakeh kol ha-nageh. And it sort of rhymes. Lo yinakeh kol ha-nageh. Nagia is touching. And so that's, I guess they're making a rhyme out of it. Or he is. They will not, next verse, they will not despise the thief if he steals to sate his appetite, for he's hungry. That's the loaf of bread. Poverty comes to him like a loaf of bread. The basic law of payment for theft is to pay the victim several times the value of the stolen goods. So here, we'll make reference to it in a second. If he is found, he will pay sevenfold. He must give all he owns. They're talking about the adulteress, the prostitute, the thief, and I don't get how it's jumping around. 32, one who commits adultery with a woman is devoid of sense. Shechita, mishachit, and I'm wondering if that when we grew up with the word miskite, I'm wondering if that's the same word, like from Hebrew to Yiddish, but I'm wildly speculating. But here's the word for devoid of sense. He destroys the soul. He will do it. He will find wounds and disgrace, and his reproach shall not be erased. Jealousy shall arouse the husband's wrath. Now, if you compare that verse 34 to the introduction to all this, I'm a little lost, but up above it, it said to a man's wrath, I've lost my reference. But it's right here. For jealousy shall rouse the husband's wrath, and he will not have pity on the day of vengeance. They're saying there's a biblical thing. It says in Hebrew gavir, which I understand to be a powerful guy, but they're translating it as husband here. Mm-hmm. Can you use gavir? Ever heard it as husband?
Yeah.
Oh, you have it. It's common.
Yeah. Well, in Israel, they'll describe a wife as geveret.
Oh, okay, very good. Okay, fair. So maybe my drasha doesn't count because it's common. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. He will not have regard for any ransom, neither will he consent though you give him bribes. And I'd like to say that we're comparing the thief, the prostitute, and the adulteress. So in my little notes, the thief has financial needs. The prostitute is a domestic resident, wants your money, and is common, but the adulteress is, as they're describing, is of foreign nature. She'll ruin your life. She is more elite in this regard.
So do you think this passage, I mean, it sort of comes out of nowhere in a way, because before this you're talking more in a homiletic way. They're giving instructions about how to be proper and what are the right things to do in life and what are the wrong things to do in life. And all of a sudden they get very specific about adultery. And when I read this over, what my thoughts were, and I didn't do any research on any commentators, but my thoughts were this. The Mishlei, correct me if I'm wrong, was written by King Solomon.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, from 2 points of view, do you think he was... I'm sorry. Do you think he was looking or thinking about his father?
Oh, very good.
When he was doing this, in case people were thinking, oh, well, you're saying about being so good, but what did your father do? And we know that David had issues with, the wife of Uriah the Hittite, where he, allegedly sent him off to battle, supposedly and possibly because he fell in love with his wife. And if that was around, if that was a rumor, if they had a National Enquirer in those days, that would probably be a big story.
It'd be like
and you're wondering,
Governor Cuomo.
Or Governor Cuomo, or anybody like that. Certainly not Donald Trump, because that's never happened to him. But what do you think? I mean, do you think that that's a possibility of why we have the structure that we do? Because it's both general, but also maybe specific to the people of his time to explain something that was going on in a previous rule.
So I have 2 thoughts. It doesn't explain why here in this section, so you have to look at what preceded it and what comes after it, and I haven't thought of it that way. So number 2, I don't know if adultery is exclusive to this one generation, this one author. Everything by Frank Sinatra and those soldiers coming home from the war, he was drooling constantly in every song, more than the Beatles, more than the Beach Boys, more than everything. If you look at the lyrics of Frank Sinatra's songs through the lens of horny out of his mind, you'll see the point that I make. Dean Martin too. Dean Martin had more class in his songs, but it's certainly different. And I don't know what's going on today, so I don't think it's exclusive to that generation. But it's a good argument, but it doesn't answer why in this particular place. But I sure didn't see that, so that's great. Okay, did I answer your question?
Well, I think it's something worth exploring because, I mean, from my point of view, and I don't know if you agree, this seems to come out of nowhere.
Yeah. That's the challenge for us to shoehorn in an answer that's not shoehorned in and makes sense. Because he could have talked about overeating.
Yeah, I don't
he
think
could have
that.
talked
I
about
don't.
anything.
Well, this is one of the 10 Commandments, not to covet your
Right. Could have
husband's
talked about
wife.
Could have talked about jealousy. He had 10 options to which to pick, but he didn't even reference the 10 Commandments. He just put it in there.
Unless, as you say, maybe because, well, I don't think that in the time of King Solomon Israel was at war as often as they were in the time of David. So
That's
the
a great
issue
point.
the issue of maybe wives are men going after married women or married women going after men may not have been the same problem, but maybe it was a problem in his time, and that's why they had to address it. I mean,
This is a strong point. You've also got to look at that. I read it with the assumption he was speaking to all ages. That's my assumption looking in. Because to pigeonhole it, I think it's unfair to pigeonhole it to a specific time and place. I think it's a cheap guess of what's going on. But if you got nothing else, it's worth giving voice to it. But I think you got to look at this is for all mankind, and the only difference till now is our technology's faster. But otherwise,
Right.
it's the same adultery, the same everything else. Maybe there's quantities of this poor practice is greater in other nations and other times and so on.
well, I mean, look at the sin of adultery. Do you think that could be, would you rate adultery over any of the other sins that they talk about as being the downfall of a civilization?
So
do you think it's that great a sin, or do you think, like you say, when a person like Como or, John Kennedy, I mean, when we look at the great men of our time, nowadays we talk about the clay feet that they had, which, or the affairs that they carried on. I mean, Albert Einstein had affairs.
affairs, really?
Albert Einstein. I mean, I don't want to talk about anybody else right now, but
I never heard that.
Well, yeah, it's a fact. Anyways, people were have had affairs outside of marriage. I'm not sure you had it with married women, so that's
The other thing is to do it properly, to gather data on secret stuff from any age can't be done. So do I think that people had affairs all through the ages? Yeah, sure. There's so much literature on it, for sure.
But would you categorize it as a sin that could really, if it was prevalent, would lead to the downfall of a culture or society more so than, say, cheating in business or...
Are you throwing gambling? Gambling would be the equivalent in literature. Well, maybe this is wild speculation. I just know that this era, because of the birth control pill, is a more promiscuous era that we were born and raised in. I don't know. I'm under the impression different eras had different challenges and different virtues, but this one we've almost erased we've erased the taint on prostitution and see it and because it's legal in so many states and decriminalized and so on, doesn't have the same odor that it has in this book. And it's almost like I'm being brought up in this era. I would disqualify myself as a judge of this commentary because I'm, Playboy After Dark was on television, the magazines, all the media, the glamorizing of the prostitute in popular Hollywood movies, that one with Richard Gere, I forget what it's called. I don't think that I can. This is an over-sexed and over-stimulated generation or two or three. So it's easy to look at it and say, "Oh, what's he talking about?" It's easy to say that. I think that doesn't give us the broad spectrum of history in which to analyze this through. Now, and I'm kind of confident. I'll say something crazy. 20% of mankind is born from out of wedlock marriage. 10%. What's the out of wedlock birth incidence through history? It's not perfect.
Right.
So I don't know. I just know that it's odd sitting here, this passage. I'm not apologizing for it. I just don't have a reason why it's there. I haven't found that, it caught my attention, and I don't know why. That's all I got.
Okay.
That's the best I got. I got one more note to follow up with this, because this may, if I stretch it a bit, it may be the summary that we're referencing here. Verse 29 through 35 are summed up by a teacher of mine 40 years ago when I was a student in Jerusalem. He was a Detroit sports reporter who, like myself, came from not a religious background. And when I learned the book of Proverbs with him, we did it one chapter a day for 30 odd days and knocked it off. And it was probably the best course I ever had, and from a sports reporter in particular. He says the first 8 or 10 chapters, the backlog, the description is, you're not dear reader, you're not listening, and you're a jerk. We're at the end of that portion. The next third of the book, congratulations, you're listening, but you're still a jerk. And the final third is, you made it, you're listening, you're no longer a jerk, so now I'll tell you what life is really all about. And you can see that in the gradual, doesn't say this about prostitutes in the first, second, third, fourth chapter. He zings it in here. A lot of the first, second, third chapters, listen to your mommy and listen to your daddy. They know what's good for you. But now he's talking about hookers. It's a shocking juxtaposition of the text, and that's all I got. So that's the end of chapter 6 in my notes, and where we are, we can. I got a couple other things I can put in here for another couple of minutes. Owen, what would you like to do? Okay, ice cream wars. We've been handling this every week since the Ben and Jerry's name was used in the political process to damn the state of Israel, and the wisdom that we are bringing to you comes from the Jewish people, comes from the Bible, and the modern day references attacking the Jewish people, the state of Israel, etc., are attacks on wisdom, as I'm trying to bring to the listeners here. You damn Israel and damn the Jewish people, you're damning wisdom. That's the subtle point I'm trying to make. So in the backlash, 2 things happened. There's a supermarket chain in Ecuador, 180 stores. They informed the local wholesaler or manufacturer, we're not carrying Ben & Jerry's anymore. So that was a backlash to those fools in Vermont who pressured the Ben & Jerry's people and then Lever Brothers. Next, there's 35 states in America who have anti-boycott laws. And they are coming under, I forget what the legal trade restraint ruling is in these states, and that's ice cream. The wisdom that we learn from the ice cream war story is, got to do your homework before you mix in, because these jerks in Vermont didn't do their homework, and now the Ben & Jerry's good company doing all kinds of doing what it should be doing, making a profit, giving people sweet, tasty stuff, may just go under, and Haagen-Dazs will laugh all the way to the refrigerator. So that's this week's chapter. This week's chapter on ice cream wars. Alan, would you like to add any other tasty morsel to the ice cream wars?
I don't know. You know what? I read something about it.
Yeah.
I was a little bit surprised when I read about it. So, and I don't know if you've mentioned this before, but I noticed they made a new the board of directors of Ben & Jerry's changed over a few weeks before the announcement was made.
Oh.
And they made the CEO. Now they're sort of independent. They're slightly independent from Unilever that owns Ben & Jerry's, and they made the CEO a woman whose name I don't remember, but she has been a radical I'd call her an anti-Israel person for many years. And when you read her biography and read the actions she's taken against Israel in the past, she's a big supporter of BDS. She's a big supporter of some of the more radical organizations. I think I shouldn't say this for certain, but she's definitely a very, very pro-Palestinian and very blind to the aspirations of the Jewish people in Israel. So it's not surprising that once she became the CEO, that the first thing that she would do, and it was only a few weeks after she became the CEO, that she pushed this agenda of BDS against Israel. So, and her original position was that they should boycott Israel totally, and Unilever stepped in and said, "We're not going to permit that. We will permit a partial boycott of selling Ben and Jerry's in the territories," which is to some extent a little less controversial. Anyways, that's the only thing I have to say about that.
She's the one without wisdom. I was hunting for her name here. We have a concluding script, and I ask you to read your part. And Alan will be our guest presenter next week. So today was baptism by fire. So Alan, have you learned something wise today?
Most certainly, yes.
Do you think we made humanity better today?
For sure. By the way, I'm reading off a script. Let's go on, yes.
Did you have fun in our secret scroll-laden wisdom cave?
It was amazing.
Will you join us again one day soon?
Probably not.
Oh, God, help me. Will they ever learn wisdom?
Probably not.
Please, folks, subscribe and share. That's all I ask. You'll see Alan and I next week, same wisdom time, same wisdom channel at Tom's Radio on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Bruce Gilboard, and I am saying have a good week.